I used to live in a ground-floor apartment. One of the many joys of living there was having neighbors that lived directly above me. Their noises throughout the day weren't too bad, but the combination of me being a light sleeper and them liking to party at ungodly hours made a fantastic recipe for neighborly resentment. One week in July last year, those former upstairs neighbors of mine began partying every night from Monday to Friday. Every night that week I could hear it all from the comfort of my bedroom. Feet stomping, bottles clinking, and the quaking hum of whatever terrible music they were listening to. As far as I could tell, it was just the two of them up there, singing, getting drunk, and God knows what else. I tried everything, from complaining to their landlord, who didn't do much at all to stop them, to calling the police, who were helpful in shutting them up for a couple of hours before they would return to their usual unacceptable noise levels. There was an old woman living above my upstairs neighbors in another apartment on the top floor. She helped me make complaints about them. It was nice to know I wasn't suffering alone, but hearing them party 5 nights in a row destroyed my already fragile sleep schedule. By that Friday morning, I felt like I was in hell. I was beyond exhausted from lack of sleep, and while working that day, my boss told me he was becoming concerned about my work performance. On Friday night, I got into bed, put my earbuds in my ears, and closed my eyes. The only solace I had was thoughts of violence against my upstairs neighbors as their terrible music and laughter echoed in my brain, keeping me wide awake. I heard the sound of loud shattering glass on their kitchen floor above me, which reverberated down from my ceiling and into my skull, triggering a headache. The sound quickly filled me with something between desperation and rage. I begged for them to stop, to just be quiet, for them to never make a noise again. I prayed to anyone or anything that could help. To my horror, something answered my prayer with a sudden silence so pure I thought I was dead. I opened my eyes. In a panic, I quickly sat up in my bed and frantically took my earbuds out of my ears. Everything was dark, still, and deathly quiet, apart from the sound of my rapid breathing. Hearing the panic in my breath made things worse. I initially thought I had gone deaf. As improbable as that was, it would have at least been a rational explanation for the sudden lack of noise, but my hearing was fine. It was everything else that was disturbingly silent. I'm not exaggerating. In the exact same second, everything just stopped. Every torturous noise from the upstairs apartment went missing all at once, along with any sound at all from outside my bedroom window. Even the natural creaks and general ambient sound from inside my apartment disappeared. The sound of my breathing was the only sound left in the world. The more my ears drank in that silence, the more wrong I realized it was. Oppressive isn't the right word to describe it, but it's halfway there. It was like the stillness was alive and smothering any sound that dared disturb it. It put me on edge. Something else felt off, like I was being watched. I scanned my bedroom, controlling my breathing and making sure to keep quiet. My headache was getting worse while trying to see in the darkness. My vision adjusted enough to see that my bedroom door, which I had closed before getting into bed that night, was now wide open. The unease in me started to grow. I anxiously peered down my dark, narrow hallway through the entrance to my bedroom. I froze. At the end of my hallway, on the other side of my open living room door, I saw a vaguely human figure stand out against the darkness. Alarm bells sounded in my brain. Fight or flight was kicking in, but I couldn't bring myself to do either, as if the immense silence was anchoring me to sit up in my bed, keeping me transfixed on the thing that was staring at me from my living room. I felt it looking at me, but I couldn't even see a glint of its eyes in the darkness. I couldn't make out many details of it. I was too scared to reach for my glasses or turn on the lamp on my bedside table. Its silhouette was as motionless as a statue and seemed entirely vantablack, making it stand out against the natural murk of the living room, like a deep wound in the darkness itself. I held my breath every time I blinked, not knowing if I was more terrified of it staying in my sight or disappearing to someplace I couldn't see it when I opened my eyes again. My heart was thumping in my chest. I struggled not to hyperventilate, desperate to keep quiet. I slowly moved my hand under my covers and pinched my thigh hard, feeling a sharp pain, hoping with all my heart to just be in a nightmare. I didn't wake up. I don't know how long I was sitting up in my bed like that. It felt like hours. My head was splitting from the headache. Eventually, the thing slowly moved a hand up to its head. I couldn't make out what it was doing at first, but I knew the gesture instantly when I heard the raspy sound escaping whatever mouth it had. Sha! The horrible sound went through me like an ice-cold wind and reminded me of rustling nettles. It didn't leave an echo. Then the thing began to move, swimming through the air in absolute silence, straight up to the ceiling of my living room. A sense of impending doom roared in my stomach, and I gripped my sheets tight. I felt its gaze leave me as it passed up through my living room ceiling into the upstairs apartment above my own. A tidal wave of extreme tiredness washed over me and extinguished the terror burning through my whole body. I passed out. I woke up the next day at around 11 a.m. to the sound of birds outside my bedroom window. I nearly cried when I heard them. The door to my bedroom was closed, as was the door to my living room. To say I was relieved would be an understatement. I was about to make myself breakfast when I heard someone knocking on my door. It was the old woman from the top floor. She had a paler face than usual. Her voice was soft with worry. "Did you hear the screams last night?" I felt the blood freeze in my veins. I was lost for words. She told me that night she heard horrific screams from below her, from two people. She had called the police as soon as the screaming started and assumed I had heard it too and done the same. As she waited for the police to arrive, the screaming grew hoarse and then slowly faded into silence just as the police busted down the door of the apartment between us. Later that day, the police came to my apartment to ask me some questions. They explained that although they heard the hoarse screams from inside the apartment when they arrived that night, they couldn't find anyone when they managed to break in. All the lights were off, and it was deathly quiet. I could tell they were confused about the whole situation. There were no signs of struggle inside, let alone any people. Despite my shock, I kept composed and answered any questions they had. I told them about my sleep deprivation and that I must have passed out hard before any of the screaming started. They were already aware of the noise complaints myself and the old woman had made, and they must have believed me. They never contacted me again after that visit. My former upstairs neighbors are still missing. They vanished without a trace. I moved out of that apartment as soon as I could. I don't know what to do. I can't tell the police what I saw. They'll just think I'm insane. I have so many questions. Ultimately, I can't shake the feeling of being responsible, like somehow my begging or praying that night summoned that thing. I never wanted them to be punished like that. I just wanted the noise to stop. All I can do is type this out and afterwards finally try and move on. But I feel like the sickly memory of the sound that thing made is going to be coiled around my mind forever. I can't be in places that are too quiet anymore. The worst part is that I've never slept more soundly in my life than I did that night, through the screams of people lost forever.